Well, morning, everybody. Afternoon and evening, depending on where you were. It's Tom from Came to Believe Recovery, and welcome to Recovery Live, our Friday live stream where we discuss all things addiction. It's 9 a.m. for our guests in California. It's 11 for our Midwest participants, 12 noon here on the East Coast where I am, and 5 p.m. in the UK, Spain, 5 or 6 in Spain for our European English guests. Anna Branson. Hi, Anna, joining us really quickly today. She's generally the first one on. Taryn Price, good morning from the Mojave Desert. Go Yanks, go Yanks. See, Taryn just knows what to say to go right to my heart. You know, the Yankees are just doing so well. Unfortunately, Dale Barker probably won't be on this. He might be listening from work, but yes, the Yankees beat the Red Sox last night in a walk-off, which we love. So here's to the Yankees. Aaron Judge, 1 home run away from tying Roger Maris for the most home runs in the American League. So he'll certainly pass that. Jonathan Klein from New York, sure, he's a Yankee fan. Wonderful to get off our show talking about the Yankees. But we do have a lot of other great news. I'm just off coming back from the Nevada City retreat, which was last weekend, where we saw a whole group of people hear the message of recovery and start a life of living 10, 11, and 12, and a lifestyle now that will bring them into a set of promises that will give them a life in a fourth dimension of which they've never experienced before. We had a wonderful time amidst the smoke of California with all the fires going on. Upcoming, guys, in the Northeast, the Schoolings Mountain Retreat is back after 3-year hiatus via COVID. So it's a weekend of the 7th through the 9th of October. So all of you in the East Coast here, we'd love to see you there. There's still some openings. We have a hayride and a bonfire. There's a lot of fun up on Schoolings Mountain in Western New Jersey in Hackettstown, where we'll be spreading the message. BJ, who's going to be on our show today, she's going to be up for the retreat. Dale Barker actually is also coming up for the retreat. So we got a good team coming to bring that message of hope to you. And then, guys, in November, we'll be talking to you more about the project in the South Bronx, where we're going to bring the message to a shelter at St. Anthony's Mission down in the South Bronx. And we're so excited about the opportunity of going into the community and delivering that message of recovery. So we have, and then at the end of October, Halloween weekend, there's a retreat in North Pennines hope I said that right, in the UK. So there's UK, there's one in New Jersey, there's going to be one in New York. We got a pretty busy fall. You can go to our website, cametobelieverecovery.org, to check out all the retreats and all the events and sign up. We have meetings, virtual meetings, and in-person meetings around the country in different places. Join us at one of these meetings to hear the message and be supported in your living your 10, 11, and 12 once you go through your steps. This show today, we're going to talk about compassion and judgment. And those are kind of big topics for us in recovery. Compassion, because somebody showed us compassion, I think, or the need for us to show compassion. And then judgment. Judgment's a tough thing and a tricky thing within the recovery community, as well as it is just in society, and how we treat others and how that we'd like to be treated. So my first guest today, to begin to talk about that, compassion and judgment, I would like to bring on from Tangerine, Florida, the lovely BJ Rapp.
Hey, good morning, Tom. Good morning, Sue, and all of you. I really look forward to joining you today. This is a great topic. Great topic.
Thanks, BJ. And our second guest is from, I think she's in Winter Park, Florida today. And another one of our founders and legacy guide writers, as is BJ, who will also be joining our discussion talking about compassion and judgment, Mrs. Susie Foreman.
Susie Foreman.
I'm the only one who calls her Susie, I think.
I think that's true.
And I don't know why I do that, but I just do.
It was my name until I was about 6 or 7.
Well, I'm Tommy to a lot of people up here.
Yes. Hi, Tommy. Good to be here.
Those people. Ladies, you guys both have a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom in the area of compassion and judgment. And there's a discussion we can have that'll go down probably one or the other road today. And we'd love for you in the audience to ask us any questions or share any of your experiences, good or bad, in the compassion category or the judgment category. I know I have a few that affected me as I've been moving through my recovery, and even to this day, especially in the judgment category.
Yeah.
But I want to reach out to in the tolerance, right? BJ, I don't know why you're laughing.
You've got no tolerance to them. Let's just let's call it spade a spade.
All I have is tolerance, guys.
I'm teasing.
So BJ, you had some great points. We were discussing and reviewing some of the notes that BJ put together before the show today about compassion, and it was interesting to see how BJ had written. There's a difference between what compassion is and what it isn't. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, BJ?
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. But I want to get a shout out to Christina. I understand she just celebrated 4 years. And that is so amazing. And bravo, darling. That's tremendous. Congratulations, September the 22nd. Way to go. Yeah, thank you, Tom. I had all judgment and no compassion. So I can start with that. But let's kind of just review what compassion is not. Compassion is not being a doormat, right? We don't need to be used, abused, and manipulated. Compassion is also not weak personalities. When I grew up, if you showed any kind of compassion, you were weak. You had to be rough and tough. Another not is we are not irrational or touchy-feely people necessarily. I'll get more into that later.
Maybe not all the time.
That's right. Not all the time. That's true, Sue. So true. What compassion is? Well, literally, it means to suffer together. To suffer together. And oh, can't we identify that through our steps and through recovery? It's also the feeling that arises when you're confronted with another suffering and feel motivated. That's the trick. And feel motivated to relieve the suffering. That's all about our step 12. In recovery, it is said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I have found that to be true all these 40-some years. Compassion, which is new to me, and I didn't realize this, and compassion slows our heart rate. So anybody with a racing heart, you might want to show a little more compassion for your own well-being. And it's really a secret, and it excretes a bonding hormone. So there's a physical thing that happens to us when we're showing compassion. Regions of the brain are actually lit up, which involve empathy, caregiving, and feelings of pleasure light up. And I think if you've ever been to our retreats, and after you've gone through a retreat, I know I'm all lit up. I have those feelings, really good feelings and pleasurable feelings of helping someone else. But usually I'm helped as much as I give. Compassion also requires wisdom, and that's to know when and how to provide it. I used to be a person who ran before God, and I was always dispersing my thoughts and what people needed and trying to fix them. That's not compassion. Compassion is given through many different ways. I want to explain that a little bit. But compassion must start with ourselves.
Absolutely.
We have to forgive ourselves. You know, in step 7, we pray to turn those character defects over to God. And he is quick to pick them up. And he has forgiven us in our step 3. So why are we holding on to what is called that old false guilt? Right? What might inhibit our compassion? Well, we've already mentioned it. Judgment, for one. When we judge people, we are showing no compassion. And when we are perfectionists, like this lady used to be, we are showing no compassion. I find that we have to see matters and issues in their life through their lens, through their way of thinking. It requires being open-minded. So that's a little bit about what it is and what it is not. And my thoughts. We learn how to do that by taking the AA 12 steps. We learn compassion. And especially when we live steps 10, 11, and 12. And as Tom mentioned, we're going to be having an on-ground retreat in Schoolies this coming month, and I'm really looking forward to that, Tom. I've never been to Schoolies all these years. Jack and I wanted to go, but we just weren't able to make it. So this is really going to be a real treat for me. But I can tell you my self-pity was huge, and that was a major character defect. When I came into the program, and I lived it all my life. Oh, the poor me, oh, boo. And I used to complain to God, why me, God? Why me, God? And I want you to know, one day he just like lit up the inside of me saying, why not you? Why not you, BJ? It's so you can have compassion on another. And I'm like, oh, I got it now. And that self-pity was taken away. Thank God of that. It was really all-consuming. But I want to, the way I see it, compassion really comes in many forms. Let me give you some ideas. The 2 wonderful ladies you don't see behind the scenes, which are Lisa and Casera, they show compassion, and their service of compassion is giving through serving of us. And they do it freely, completely, and with smiles on their faces. That's compassion. Sue, who is a wonderful teacher, she exudes knowledge and wisdom and has a desire for children and right up to the very suffering. And she shows compassion through her wisdom in sharing what she's learning with all of us. And believe it or not, Tom Williams even shows compassion. Yes, he does. And how does he do that? He has the vision of came to believe, and he shows through leadership. His desire is that there not be one suffering person due to physical addiction in the world. That's compassion.
That's big.
Other forms of compassion are through mercy, and my particular gift of compassion is through encouragement. And that is encouragement with jumping into that well, with a very dark well, and helping people to find the way out of the darkness through the suffering. I've been there too. And through the 12 steps, I've learned what that looks like and how to recover. And so that is a form, the various forms that come into play with compassion. It just may look different, but the administration may look different of it.
Mm.
But we all, I believe, who are in recovery show compassion. We've been there. We've
Totally.
suffered,
Mm.
and we know the way out. Now, I do want to close with this because I got to run off to physical therapy here in a few minutes. But I think it was summed up best by a page 164 in the what I call the big book. It's the Alcoholics Anonymous book. And the closing goes like this. It goes, God will constantly disclose more to you. Ask him each morning what you can do for the person who is still suffering. The answers will come if your own house is in order. See to it that your relationship with God is right. Great events will come to pass to you and others. And that's recovery. That's compassion. Thank you.
Thanks, BJ. That's just fabulous. I was thinking while you were talking, and especially with Sue on here too, you both are what we know, because we know you, that you're not normies, but we call you guys normies as being that you were not addicted to a substance. You had other things going on, I'm sure, and things, but that compassion and judgment, I think, I was just thinking about this, when I give compassion for an addict, I was exactly where they were in the use of the substance and the hopelessness of that. And so my compassion arises from looking back and saying, I remember being there actually. And so I can get some compassion, and I could be a little judgmental too, more because I wish someone had been a little harder on me, maybe, so I want to be a little harder on them in some cases. But how did you, I don't know how I want to, you and Sue, how did you, harness some compassion without that level of experience like I had?
I grew up, Tom, in a very alcoholic home and addiction. My mother was an alcoholic, and I had 3 brothers out of 4 that were addicted, and in some cases, 2 of them to the point of death. And one brother was in recovery of some level. And so growing up in that family, and at the time you felt so absolutely helpless as to what you could do to help them. And you tried all kinds of various things, but nothing really seemed to work. We never had even heard of AA or Al-Anon at that time, didn't have a clue. So most of us just tried to suffer along with them, seeing them kill themselves, and and then every relationship I ever had in some way, shape, or form was involved with some kind of addiction. And I married an alcoholic. So
what about
Does
you?
that answer the question that you're asking? Like, how did we, if we're not physically addicted to a particular substance that we use in order to center ourselves and to feel or to cover up the pain of existing, what else did we use? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Or-
I'm asking, like, my sense of compassion comes as, I came through it. It's like the guy who was in the boat, who was in the foxhole or something, being and wounded, and he was there. So when he sees another wounded person, they can really connect with that. Where you guys didn't really have that direct personal, you had the external, but when they looked at you and they can't stop. Maybe it's harder for you to say, I get it.
Well, I want you to distinguish between identity and compassion, because identifying certainly lets you feel what you felt, And then you project onto them that pain and you have pity on them for certain. But there's compassion is a particular word. And it very often, not very often, it sometimes shifts ever so slightly into codependence. And that you can be codependent as a fellow alcoholic because of your identity with the pain that you felt. You can be taking on what they feel, and you can, you certainly have compassion for them, but that doesn't necessarily tell you how to support them. So compassion is an interesting slippery slope. So it's kind of a, from our point of view, maybe, but I think everyone who is an addict, they still have people in their family or friends who are also addicts. So that while they're trying to deal with their own addiction, they also are looking at their friends and feeling compassion for them. But you must watch out for that compassion slipping into codependence. And have you thought about what is that slope? Where does that come from? What is the thought process that I would have, or you would have, Tom, when you see someone going down that road, a sponsee, and you see them making just, how do you keep yourself from moving into codependence, and how do you identify exactly what kinds of your behaviors are compassionate?
Those are great questions. I'm sure BJ's dying, but you got to go, right, BJ?
I do. I'm sorry. I love you. I'd love to continue more of this, but I'm going to have to go. I love you all. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us.
I thought you were going to answer that question, BJ.
I know. We'll do it. So, all right. So I know we're going down this road, this compassion. So as you were talking, compassion could not be solving anything. Compassion could not have boundaries. It could have very little action. I'm just compassionate for someone, and it could easily go into codependency. I could see where your compassion is just coming alongside somebody and saying it's okay, and almost co-signing their misery.
Co-signing, codependent,
not allowing. I mean, that is not what compassion, I don't think.
I think not.
I think compassion is a sense of empathy and lacks judgment. When you come in and say, listen, I get it, and I feel so bad for you, and I understand you, like the whole active listening thing, which says, it makes sense to me that because this, that, and without judgment now, this or that.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
I think it might, as a matter of fact. I think from my experience is that very often people will say, so what can I do? What can I do? What can I do is to not hurt my child anymore? What can I do to not pile on to the pain my spouse is already feeling? What can I do to fix him? Maybe that's most popular. What can I do? And of course, that might be a compassionate thing. You want to relieve their pain, but I and you cannot look at someone else's decisions and say, oh, that's not the right behavior, or that's not the right one. You ought to do this or that, because it is completely dependent on why they make those choices. And am I going to make that choice because I'm embarrassed by him? Or am I going to make it a different choice because my child is reflecting badly on me? How much of me feeling shame for not being able to do something? How much of it is leftover shame from childhood wounds that would make me feel desperate to fix someone? And the more desperate we are to fix them, the more slippery that slope goes from compassion to codependence.
So see one of our comments, Anna Branson, and Tabia Gasso also I think that they fall into this, Sue. They're saying that they can fall into enabling is what they feel like
Enabling, same
is
word thing.
is co-signing and enabling and compassion. I think with the family member, it's such a hard thing. I can imagine with the teenager who just keeps going out and getting drunk. And do they choose a live teenager that's a drunk and let them come home every day, or do they set a boundary and say the doors are locked and you're out? And which is compassion, right?
But I'm not sure.
Right.
Because what I'm saying is that if you boil this down to specific behaviors or prescriptions and try to say, oh, that's 80% compassion, and this one is maybe that's only 50-50 codependence and compassion, you can't do it. You absolutely cannot do it. And the problem that all of us in Al-Anon or or if we're sponsoring someone, when we go to trying to help someone else, we've got to, BJ called it wisdom. We must be wise enough to ask the questions of ourselves. Am I doing this? Let me just take a minute to think about it. Am I going to leave my husband to show him a thing or two? I'm going to leave him so that he can see how much he misses me. Or I can't take this anymore. So how much of this is me? How much is this because of my own pain that I come up with behaviors that are going to change his behavior so that I'll feel better? That's codependence. That's not compassion, but it looks like it. It looks like it. I'm going to bail that boy out of jail because I need to look like a good mother. That's codependence. So how guilty do I feel in this moment? Am I doing this because of some of my own shame? Or underneath all of that is fear. Fear of someone judging. So we're in that other thing. Fear of somebody judging me. For whatever million different reasons each of us might have. They're rarely exactly the same, but they're always generally the same. But, compassion, codependence, empathy, these are not synonyms. They are not the same words.
Well, I love that. So you just made me think of the four absolutes, right? Because is our action towards this person honest, unselfish, pure in motive,
Yeah,
right?
the purity.
So it lacks compassion, I think, when it's going to make you look good to do this. Now, making you feel good, I think that's another thing that you feel okay. I don't know that that's a bad thing to feel like you did the right thing.
Well, I don't think so. The satisfaction of actually being able to do something that will help someone. Yeah, maybe there's a little of that in there too for some of us who, want to desperately make up for lost time doing things wrong. Maybe I can make up for it by doing something right.
Well, let's talk about, and this would be something Cassara probably would have opinions about and some experience with, but I think about the harm reduction issue when we talk about compassion, because I think that could be some true compassion to be going down into the street and giving somebody food just to give them food. And being
perfect example, because what we cannot tell, that's why the steps are exactly the same for someone who is addicted to a substance and for those of us for whom the substances have never given us relief. So we find some other things. Sometimes we find relief by sacrificing for other people because it makes us feel good. It's a funny little thing there. Doing that, we need to just be careful, because if it makes us feel good, then we're too invested in their choices. I think what Cassara was saying, she just goes, she doesn't expect them to say, oh, thanks a lot. She just does it. But I think she has worked through this. I need to do this in order to show that I'm a good person.
Yeah, I don't think she does it at all for that reason.
Exactly. But we can't tell from the outside. That's why we must individually do our own 12 steps and ask ourselves questions. Am I fine with myself? Am I trying to make up because I'm ashamed of something? Then let me deal with that, because then I can give willingly. And I'm not going to, if that person makes a choice we don't like, especially with children, we take away their power by trying to control them. It's such an insult. But if we can go to them feeling confident that we have done the steps, we know that we're forgiven for everything else, we are doing step 10, seeking only knowledge of God's will for our lives, not God's will for my child's life. But our life, how can I feel safe, so safe